You're listening to a weekly podcast made by Miami Dolphin fans for Miami Dolphin fans. Your source for entertaining Dolphin news, insight, and general conversation. Here's your host, Michael Fink.
Okay, thanks everyone for joining us tonight for the Finfans podcast. We're going to look over some individual grading, and then we'll get into a couple of matchups. And then I'll introduce Daniel and Jim, who will be joining me to discuss these matchups. And we'll tell you who we think is going to win the contest. I always get a little bit excited when the Oakland Raiders come in. I don't know why that is exactly. They're not really a rival of ours. But I think it's just a little bit left over for some of those great games we had in the 70s. And the Raiders always used to be a thorn in our side. And every time we can beat them, I feel just a little bit better than I would over beating most anybody else other than our AFC East rivals. So with that said, let's dig into the game a little bit. And it's only been 2 weeks, so I don't want to get too heavy in the numbers because I think that a lot of them are going to change significantly, over the next course of maybe the next course of the month. But I do think some of it is relevant. So I'll go over it real quick, and you can make your own decisions as to whether or not you think the numbers mean anything or not. That's always open to personal interpretation. So, all right, I'm going to start with the offensive line grades. And as I said, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time with it, so follow along. I did want to bring up that Mike Pouncey is ranked 4th of all the centers. Kilgore is 24th. Mike Tunzel is 16th at tackle. Juwan James is 35th. At guard, Jesse Davis is 57th. Ted Larson's 59th. Sitton was 32nd when he went out, so obviously we miss him a little bit. Tannehill is ranked 19th, and that's right behind Goff and right in front of Darnold. Now that's what happens when you grade the film instead of looking at just QBR and completion percentage. As I tried to illustrate yesterday, he's made some mistakes, and these things are going to count against him when they're grading the film, even though it was a 1-yard completion to Frank Gore. So that's just how that goes. At wide receiver, Wilson is 17th, Grant is 31st, our old friend Jarvis Landry is 38th, Kenny Stills is 49th, and Danny Amendola is 66th. On the defensive side, Vincent Taylor is 39th, Akeem Spence is 42nd, Devon Godchaux is 63rd, and Ndamukong Suh is 11th. At the defensive end position, Robert Quinn is 9th, Wake is 34th, Hayes is 35th, Charles Harris is 84th, and Andre Branch is 90th. At linebacker, we have Alonzo at 47th, we have Baker at 52nd, and we have McMillan at 72nd. That doesn't surprise me. As I mentioned last week, he looked slow, and he looked just as slow this week. At cornerback, Fitzgerald is 32nd, McCain is 41st, and Howard is 75th. At safety, McDonald is 62nd, and Rashad Jones is 78th. Now, as I said, it's a small sample size, and before all is said and done, players in James and Tannehill should rise, and other players are going to fall. It's only been 2 weeks. Looking at this week's QBs, David Carr ranks 8th in passing yards with 591. Ryan Tannehill ranks 27th with 398. Now, QBR tells a little different story. QBR says that Tannehill ranks 10th and Carr ranks 20th. You can make of that what you will. What it tells me is the Raiders' offense is more aggressive. That said, Carr has been sacked twice, Tannehill 5 times. Carr has 10 throws over 20 yards, 1 over 40. Tannehill has 3 throws over 20 yards and 1 over 40. The Raiders are definitely more aggressive. Now, overall, the Raiders rank 10th in total yards, and Miami ranks 26th. The Raiders average 6.2 yards a play, and the Dolphins average 5.2. So that's a full yard difference. Interestingly, points scored tells an entirely different story because in 2 games, Miami has scored 47 points to the Raiders' 42. Now, they did get, the kick return for the touchdown, so that factors in with. So it's pretty clear the Raiders are getting chunk plays, but not always finishing drives. Now, both these quarterbacks get the ball out of their hands quickly. Carr averages 2.8 seconds per throw. Tannehill averages 2.26, so they're real close. Don't expect the pass rushers to have a great day unless the corners are locking people down. Defensively, the Raiders gave up 375 yards a game and 6 yards a play. The Dolphins gave up 349 yards a game and 5.4 yards per play. The Raiders are losing the time of possession battle to their opponents 27-46. Miami's on the positive side, just barely, 30 minutes and 35 seconds. Miami leads the league in opponents' QBR against at 56.6. Of course, that has a little bit to do with the competition. The Raiders are 7th at 79. The Raiders have given up 3 chunk plays on the ground. Miami's given up 1. That's plays over 20 yards. Miami and the Jets and Seattle are tied in the league with 5 interceptions apiece. The Raiders have intercepted 1 pass. Miami has caused 2 fumbles, recovered 1. The Raiders caused 1, but it was recovered by their opponent. Miami has 3 defensive sacks, and the Raiders have 2. Now, there's really only 3 matchups that stick out to me this week. It's a lot different than the last couple of weeks. And they're all on the defensive side of the ball, and I bet you really didn't expect that, did you? I'm concerned about Rashad Jones trying to keep up with Jared Cook. I suspect Baker will be helping him, if not solely responsible. I'm concerned about Howard keeping up with Amari Cooper. The other concern I have is I'm concerned about the Raiders getting locked down on their left side because I think Fitzpatrick and McCain should have reasonable success against an aging Jordy Nelson and slot receiver Seth Roberts. If I'm the Raiders, I'm going to try and test Miami's linebackers in this game. I do believe they may be able to have some success there. I'm going to take Lynch and challenge him and really see what he can do against our linebackers if I'm the Raiders. I'm also going to ask him just to beat up our defensive front. As you know, we rotate, but I still think a big guy like that is going to have his presence felt by the end of the game. Then as Jones creeps up, I'll be looking to play action to the backs or Cook or Cooper, and should be easy peasy for the Raiders. Unless that front's up to the task, and my suspicion is they will be. That would spell trouble for the one-dimensional Raiders, and Miami's defense should be able to eat. The Raiders will be aggressive, but if Tannehill can remain poised and not make those critical errors, I like Miami to win, and I like them to win pretty convincingly, 30-13. What I'm going to do now is go ahead and introduce Daniel and Jim Johnson to give you their thoughts on the game, and we'll talk about it a little bit more. All right, guys, here we are. Dan, what are your thoughts?
You spoke about the Raiders' defense being aggressive, and what I have seen from them on film is that they like to bring 5 or 6 guys down on the line to kind of disguise what they're doing. But they haven't been able to generate much of a pass rush early in the year. Only Bruce Irvin and Maurice Hurst have been able to actually sack the quarterback. They've only got 2. We know that when Tannehill has trouble disguising blitzes, he struggles a little bit. Tannehill, yeah. When Tannehill struggles to process the defense, what they're doing when they disguise things, he struggles a little bit, and I think it's going to be really important for him to stay poised, like you said, through that. Now, Paul Guenther, he is an aggressive guy, but he doesn't actually blitz too often. The one thing that I can say about him is he's been in Cincinnati for a while, and 2 of the last 4 years as their coordinator. The Cincinnati defense has finished in the top 10 on scoring defense, and he studied under Zimmer, so we know he has a good defensive mind, and I would expect him to disguise things and come at him from different angles. But I think our offensive line actually has a good day on Sunday, keeping Tannehill upright, giving him plenty of time. So I do think that we have an advantage there.
Yeah, on defense, Oakland does move a lot of linebackers around, and they move, corners up, and they move guys back and forth to confuse the offense and the quarterback. But like you mentioned, they don't blitz a lot. So if they're not pressuring Tannehill, all that moving around is hopefully not going to amount to much. Obviously Tan E. Hill has some issues with reading some defenses here and there. But I'm with you, Dan, that the offense should be able to kind of have their way a little bit with this defense. It's not as stout as the two defensive lines that we've faced already. So we should be more successful in the run game, which, once you're running the ball, basically everything else gets a bit easier because they start crowding the box. So your receivers start to have easier job getting open. So I think we should be good on offense, but we'll have to see how it plays out.
Yeah, so Juwan James is going to be going up against Bruce Irvin, who is the number one guy I think we need to take care of. And then their linebacker, Tahir Whitehead, who's their leading tackler on defense to this point, is going to be the guy who's probably really looking at Kenyon Drake. You said it, Jim, that we should be able to run on them. I think it's going to be really important for us to not only establish the run, but to stay with the run. They are last in the league right now in giving up 5.7 yards per rush, and we are doing a really good job of running the ball. We've had some really good lanes. Guys like Jasecki even throwing blocks on touchdown runs. So I think if we establish the run, which I believe we can, and if we stay with the run, which I believe it's time for Gase to do, then that's going to open up a lot of other things. Their defensive tackles are a little banged up. They just signed Jonathan Hankins, who's a 5-year vet, who's got a lot of experience. But I think that we have an advantage there, even though our offensive line isn't highly graded, which we'll touch base on a little bit of the grades again in a bit. But I believe that we have an advantage there and that we can establish the run. So that's what I'm looking at. I think Kenyon Drake has another opportunity to have a really big day.
Yeah, I don't see why not, Dan. I mean, if you look at the two teams that the Dolphins have played in Tennessee and the Jets, they're both known for kind of stuffing the run and being stout up front. And Oakland, like you mentioned, is giving up almost the most yardage per carry on the ground. So if we're having success running against the Jets and the Titans, we should be able to keep on running against Oakland. And once you start doing that, everything else gets easier.
One of the things I seen on film was Philip Lindsay from Denver being very successful in like the draw play or bouncing some things to the outside. I think we have an opportunity to run on them really well this weekend.
Yeah, one of the things that, with only 2 weeks worth of data is a couple of long runs can totally skew the stats. So they might look like they're easy to run against, and it could turn out they're not nearly as easy as we think.
They could definitely clog the middle. Those big bodies in there we're definitely pushing around some of the offensive linemen for Denver, but I don't think Denver's offensive line is all that great. I think that ours is going to be better this weekend than we've seen them already, and they have already done a really good job. They've done a really good job at creating those running lanes. They've done a really good job at creating time for Tan E. Hill, and I think that continues this week. I don't see them putting a ton of pressure on Tannehill. I see him being able to step up in the pocket. I'm looking for him to recognize when he needs to move around in the pocket a little bit better. And I'm looking for our wide receivers who have got speed to be able to get some yards after the catch. I'm not sure that I'm scared of their cornerbacks. They've only got one turnover on the year, and that was Rashawn Melvin last week against Case Keenum. I'm looking for us to have a big day.
Yeah, we're always talking about winning the games that we should win, and then, winning a big game that we really were given no chance at winning. So this is a game that on paper we should win, and by the stats we should win. They're traveling from the West Coast all the way down to hot, humid Florida. We should have the advantage here. And the Oakland Raiders, one of their weaknesses on defense has been giving up third downs. They're giving up almost half the third downs, like 45%. So, the Dolphins' weaknesses has been completing third downs, converting them on offense. So this is a good game to make that happen and, give the offense maybe a little bit easier time to convert that third down or two. So I think we bust out some touchdowns in this game.
Yeah, we struggled at the beginning of last game to convert third downs, kind of like we have for the past few years. But we finished a little better than I remember us finishing, something like 5 for 11 on third downs. And the Raiders are adept at giving up third down conversions. So what I'm looking for us to do is stay ahead of the chains on first down. I mean, I know that should probably go without saying. It's pretty common sense. But if we can get 4 or 5, 6 yard chunks on first down, then it really opens up the playbook. And I think that we do a better job of that this week. I think that we're going to get an offensive rhythm going a little quicker this week than we have in the past couple of weeks. And I look for us to score the ball on times that it is not a turnover. Like I don't want us to have to rely on a turnover in their end to score points. And I think that we're going to do a better job of that.
Yeah, obviously it would be really nice if they came out hot and, completed a nice drive in the early games. Early on, we seem to struggle putting plays out there and converting third downs and staying on the field early in the game. So, hopefully we have that opportunity and we take advantage of that opportunity. And Oakland is, I'm not knocking Oakland. They've got Bruce Irvin and some other players that are quality guys out there, but they're not as stout up front as the last two teams we've faced are. So if you base it off of how we perform there, we should do even better this week.
Yeah, and as most people are saying, this is the time that we put in all the work out there in that humidity for and all that heat. If we can stay too committed to the run, we should be able to gas them early and to really put it to them. I think we're going to have our highest output offensive points wise in this game, and I think that we're going to score 30 on them. We're going to put up a 30 spot.
Yeah, I figure we're going to get a 31. I'm going to one up you, Dan, and say 31.
Boom.
I said 31st.
You said 31 first.
Whatever, I said it first.
I thought you guys were both at 30. I'm one up in both of you.
Better check that again, bud. Check that again.
I'll have to check it again later, but okay, so I said 31. Who else said 31? Because I think you stole it. It's not right.
Yep.
Not right.
Jim. I'm the only original here.
I said
I'm going to be ecstatic if they score 31, but that's what I think they're going to do.
Yeah, I think we're going to be able to put more points on the board this week, and we've talked about it. It's going to be about establishing and staying to the run, and it's going to be about converting third downs.
Yep,
because
and
if we
maybe
keep
a couple of turnovers going our way too.
And I'll talk about that here in just a second. I think we turn the ball over a couple of times, or we get a couple of turnovers. We make them turn the ball over a couple of times. But yeah, if we can convert third downs, keep their defense on the field, keep their defense gassed, keep ours fresh, we're going to hang up 30 on them.
Yeah, I don't see why we can't do it. We left a lot of points really on the table at the Jets game. That second half, we struggled to convert, and there was some plays there that were available, and we just couldn't get them executed. So hopefully we make them happen this week.
I got a feeling. I think Tannehill's going to play well. I think the defense is going to play well.
Attaboy.
I even think Devontae Parker is going to play well. What do you think of that?
Wow.
Playing the Parker card.
Yep, I am. I pulled it.
The Parker card. Well, what did I see or did I hear? Was you telling me earlier today that he's number 1 on the depth chart?
He is.
Back to number 1?
He is.
Jimmy, how do you like that? How do you like them apples?
Well, if I'm Kenny Stills, I'm pretty pissed off that Parker is now your number 1 guy again, but he was the first-round draft pick. He's your prototypical number 1 receiver, I guess. He hasn't produced enough for me to be number 1 in anything other than taking up space. So, you gotta get him on the field and give him his opportunity to shine, but I would struggle putting him at number 1.
I don't think Kenny would be upset. As a matter, one of the things I like most about Kenny is he's the team first type of guy. I don't think that he's going to be upset about it. As a matter of fact, I think that if Parker can help us and do the things that he is physically capable of doing, Kenny Stills is going to be really excited about that. It's going to open up the field for the rest of them. I get your point, though, because Kenny Stills has been out there putting in the work and doing the work and being on the field to do it. And Parker has been unable to, for one reason or another. And I am at the point now where I would rather see him work his way back onto the field and not being on the field the first snap. Now, call him the number one if that's what you want to call him. But I would rather see him come in at a lower snap count to start coming back than to just throw him back out there as the full-fledged number one, because these other guys have been putting in the work.
I think Case kind of sent him a little bit of a message last week when he didn't play him.
Yeah, he definitely did, and Parker wasn't too happy about that from my understanding.
Yeah, he was inactive. Not even that he didn't play him. He was inactive at all.
Yeah, and apparently healthy enough to play, but just inactive. And I like that. I can dig that completely, because what have you done for me lately?
No, and I agree on the whole Kenny Stills thing. He's a team first guy. He's not a me guy. And I was saying, if I was Kenny Stills, I'd be aggravated, but we need to see what we have with Parker, and the only way we're going to do that is get him on the field, and he hasn't been in games, so we need to get him running down the field and see what he can do.
Well, he's going to want to do it because he wants to get paid.
Well, yeah, contract year. I mean, if he doesn't perform now, he's going to lose millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah, and speaking of what have you done for me lately, I know Mike is wondering, and I'm sure some of our other members are wondering how we feel about Jaceki. Is this going to be the week that he breaks out? I know how I feel about it. Guys, how do you feel? Do you think Jaceki comes in and makes some catches this week? Because I'm kind of reserved about that.
Well, I'd like to see him into the game and getting more touches or more opportunities. Not so much that I want to show everybody what he can do, but I want to get him more involved. I don't want to have him, busting the seams up and, getting 3 TD catches or something right off the bat. I'd rather kind of bring him in slowly, but I would like to see him a little more involved offensively, and I think that would help him as a player, get confidence, and it would also obviously help us on offense.
Well, if we're going to be scoring in the area of 30 points, you got to figure they're going to have more red zone opportunities. And with that, I would think he'd get a few more chances.
Yeah, and I think he'll have a career high this week. 2 catches, which would be a career high for him. Gase, if we listen to Gase this week, he said that Jaceki is doing his part and Jaceki is involved. He also said that the other teams seen him on tape coming out of college too, so they know what to expect. So once he comes onto the field, they're cheating his way. Now, if we continue to have him in there blocking, which he did a good job of that last week, Gase said it, I seen it, I said it. If he continues to do those things, they're not going to key on him every time he's in the game. And right now, they're still keying on him every time he's in the game because he's a pass-catching tight end. He's more in the vein of a Greg Olsen, like I've said before. So I don't expect for him to have a big game this week. I am looking for in the near future him to get involved in the red zone, like you just said, Mike. I don't think that this is the week for it, though. I would expect him to get a little more involved. Like I said, I'm calling 2 catches for him this week.
Yeah, the longer he stays in there not making catches and blocking, the more other teams will go to sleep on him. So, realistically, if you feel he's that good and is ready to go, then why unwrap him, really? Give him a catch or two to build his confidence, but don't polish him up and put him out there on display just yet. So
we'll see it's called a setup.
There you go. Let everybody go to sleep, and then give them both barrels.
If they're truly doubling him like they said, then somebody else got to be open.
Yeah, and I'm glad, like Gase said, that Tannehill's not forcing him the ball. I like that. And if they are cheating his way, it's going to open other things up, especially once we do get him involved. I wouldn't even mind seeing us get him involved in like a Kelsey-ish shovel pass this week. Kind of the same thing Trubisky did with Trey Burton on Monday night.
Like
Give him
that.
a little shovel pass. I don't see that kind of thing from Gase very often, and I think it's something that if we get those motions coming through, we've already got Albert Wilson coming through. You know what I mean?
Quarterbacks had a little trouble holding on to the ball.
I'm gonna pass on that one.
Yeah, well, how many teams are using a shovel pass very much anyway? I mean, I'd like to see it. It takes teams off guard because they're not prepared for it, but
Yeah.
you don't see teams doing it much.
Yeah, and if we can get him in motion through the middle of this week, and we have that on tape, maybe we can get a shovel pass to him next week against the Patties.
You know, you never used to see teams go for it on fourth down either, but you're starting to see it again. They're starting to get more aggressive on fourth down. So, you know, who knows what the next thing is going to be that they decide is good to do, but I don't see a great risk in doing a shovel pass. It's still a pass, right?
Absolutely.
So if it falls, it's incomplete. It's not hurting anybody. You know, unless they think the guy's going to throw it to the other team, you know. But I think it's a pretty safe play overall because if the hole is there, you've got usually a defense fooled.
Yeah, especially if our offensive line is doing their job.
Right.
And I think they can.
The only thing I might say is maybe Kilgore ain't the guy to do that behind. I don't know. I got to see more of him.
I've been unimpressed, I suppose you could say, with Kilgore so far.
Fair. That's fair.
Yeah, unimpressed. But he has an opportunity to be really good. I've seen some really good things from him. So.
Yeah, well, all of this is up in the air. You know, will Kilgore improve? You know, will he, roll another snap back to Tannehill? Who knows? But, those shovel pass plays and those things that kind of take a team off guard are what really keeps the defense guessing. And once you get to that point, the playbook, is wide open and you can go wherever you want. So the more they mix it up, the happier I am, really.
Yeah, so for my summary of our offense, their defense, I think that Tahir Whitehead is going to be shadowing Kenyon Drake coming out of the backfield. I think our offensive line is not only going to give Tannehill plenty of time, but also open up some running lanes. I think the receiver speed that we have is going to allow us to get some yards after the catch, and I think that we can definitely beat their cornerbacks. I believe wholeheartedly that Kenyon Drake will be the MVP of this game for us. I think I'll probably go on record with that every week until it happens. We all know how much of a Kenyon Drake lover I am, but he's electric. Every time he touches the ball, he has an opportunity to take it to the house.
What's not to love?
Yeah, every time he touches the ball, he has an opportunity to take it to the house. So I think that we can handle them, and I think we put up 30. 30!
Are you enjoying Grant?
100%. 100%. I think he has an opportunity to take one to the house this week, too. I thought he was going to bend that one around the edge last week and take it to the house.
You know what I like about Grant? He's our...
Besides everything?
Yeah, really. He's an overachiever. He's a little guy.
Yes.
He's a speed demon, but he plays with heart. And, you look at a guy that's 5'7", you wouldn't think he'd be on the football field at all, never mind on the NFL level. And here's a guy that's rated as our best blocker, which tells you, he knows how to put himself in between where the ball is and where the blocker is. So where the guy he's got to block is. So, he's smart about it. He's not injured. He's, if he's doing his job, he's taking advantage of his opportunities, and that's what you got to do.
Yeah, he's cut in the same vein as a Steve Smith. Turning over to the other side of the ball, I believe this week that the one thing about Derek Carr is that if you put pressure on him, he will make mistakes. I think our defensive line, we have a couple of studs. Everybody knows them as Robert Quinn and Cameron Wake. Robert Quinn, you even said, Mike, that he's rated as the 9th best defensive end so far this season. I think that he's going to give rookie Colton Miller everything he can handle out there on the edge. I think Cam Wake steps up a little bit against an aging Donald Penn, and I think we forced Joe Philbin's boy, Derek Carr, into a couple of mistakes. I think we pick off 2 this week. I think this is the week Minkah Fitzpatrick gets his first, as a matter of fact. So watch out for Minkah to get his hands on a ball. I am really impressed with the way our defense have been playing. I said we'd talk about grades a little bit more, and this is where I wanted to do that. Our defensive grades have not been fantastic, and I don't see that, because what I see is our play translating very well on the field. I think our defensive backs should probably be graded higher, and I don't understand how they have X rated at like so low. I think that he is outstanding. I think he can take away Amari Cooper this week, who caught 10 out of 10 balls last week. The one area that I would say that we definitely have to watch for is Jared Cook, the tight end. Tight ends have eaten against us really well, and I think that we have to improve our tackling this week. We have been rated lowest in our tackling because Marshawn Lynch is a man who will make you miss the first tackle. He's known for it. He's called beast mode for a reason. I believe that we have to be on our tackling game because we can't allow him to get out in space.
Yeah, no doubt. If Marshawn gets rumbling down the field, we're going to be in deep trouble. But, you mentioned Derek Carr, and, our old favorite Joe Philbin was really wanting to get a hold of Derek Carr. But
whose old favorite?
Well, everybody's, right? Come on. Yeah. Anyway, I just figured I'd see if I could get a reaction from the listeners. But the thing with Derek Carr is he's been struggling really over the last 11 road games. He's only scored basically one touchdown pass per game in those 11 road games. He's had a couple of games where he's had 2 touchdown games, and in those 11 road games, they've only scored more than 16 points one time. They haven't traveled well. They're traveling, across the country again to the South Florida humidity and heat. So he's going to struggle. You mentioned Cameron Wake and Robert Quinn were going to eat, and I hope that's the case. But they do try to get the ball out quickly. So if they're gonna pressure him, they're gonna have to be real fast about it. You mentioned Jared Cook. He's a guy that's one of the leading TEs in the game right now. He's got, in 2 games, he's got 13 receptions for 229 yards. So we've got to keep him under control, and we've got to wrap him up with somebody that can make some plays. So. Hopefully, maybe Minka Fitzpatrick can help us with that a little bit, and maybe Jerome Baker can get involved in breaking up a pass or two. So,
the way you're going to sack him is by getting inside pressure and giving your ends time to get there. You got to get him off his spot.
Yeah, if you make him roll out and here's Cam Wake or Robert Quinn, then that's a good deal right there. So yeah, but he's Oakland's been getting the ball out in just over 2 seconds, like 2.19 or 2.2 seconds. So they know that their offensive line is a weakness, so they're getting the ball out quickly. So they haven't had a lot of deep balls down to Amari Cooper, but like Daniel said, Amari Cooper was 10 for 10 last week. So let's hope that he's only 6 for 10, and Howard has a pick or two. So.
Yeah, and Derek Carr completed something along the lines of 90% of his balls last week, and a lot of that did have to do with him getting the ball out of his hands quickly. I don't think that we let him get it out quite as quickly this week. I think our defensive backs are going to have a little bit better coverage than Denver's did. I'm not sure what happened to Denver's defense. I thought they were better, but they didn't give up a ton of points. But if I'm not mistaken, Jim, that you said that they've scored over 16 points once on the road lately, and was that last season against us down in Miami? I think the last time we played them, they beat us 27-24. I don't see that happening again. Like I already said, I think we put up 30. But I think that we're going to be able to maintain in the middle of our defense. I think that if there was one game ball that I would have given out last week, it would have been to our defensive line. I said in the podcast last week that I thought our defensive line was going to do a really good job against the Jets, and we did. We did an excellent job. Devon Godchaw did great, and the rest of that defensive rotation on the line did a great job too. I've really liked what I've seen from Godchaw. I think that continues this week, but Marshawn Lynch is a beast, and I think that he is probably going to, he's going to get something around 70, 80 yards this week. He's going to be able to maintain some sort of ground game, but our important factor is being able to stay right with those receivers and having either Minka or Jerome Baker or Rashad Jones covering Jared Cook. And there's another important factor to think about is we just signed Maurice Smith from the practice squad this week. That's something that Michael had told me earlier and asked my opinion on that. And I think that that is definitely something that is it's going to be a factor if Rashad Jones is as banged up as, he appeared today in a shoulder sling. Maurice Smith is a guy who's flying around in the preseason, and a lot of us really expected him to make the roster. I know you did, Jim. Do you think that he's going to come in this week and have a hand in keeping Jared Cook in check?
Well, I'd like to see that. He's a little faster than Jones, and he's a little more athletic. And that's what you need to cover those, somebody like Jared Cook. But whether he can come in and fill in, I don't know. If Jones is banged up and can't play as many snaps as normal, then somebody's going to have to step up. And it would make sense to have Smith step right in there. And hopefully, he seemed to want it badly. So if he gets an opportunity, he's liable to look really good out there.
Yeah, and in the intro, Mike, you talked about the other side of the defense, the opposite side of X, and you got guys like Jordy Nelson and Seth Roberts. You've also got a speedy guy in Martavis Bryant. I don't think that they have too much of an impact this week, kind of like you said you didn't think so. I think Bobby McCain and Micah Fitzpatrick are going to do an excellent job on them guys. Jordy Nelson was seen back returning punts last week, and I don't know what that's about. But I'm not too scared of him these days. He's not the same receiver he once was. He doesn't get the same separation as, say, a Quincy Enunwa.
Well, remember when we used to put Hartline back there? It's the same type of deal.
Sure, he's got the sure hands.
Right.
He's just not I would say that he's a little longer in the tooth than I would want. But then again, we put Amendola back there to do the same thing, and he's known for being a little brittle. So I guess it makes sense.
Somebody got to catch it.
Yeah, no doubt.
I think if they have one glaring weak spot on this team, it is the strong side linebacker. Their starter is a guy named Emmanuel Lemur, and I think we're going to be able to take advantage a little bit of those linebackers in the running game. I think we're going to find space to run. 6 yards a clip is something that I think is definitely doable this week. And I'm just looking for us to have a much better offensive output. I'm looking for us defensively to be able to stifle pretty much everything that they're doing. I do think X handles Amari Cooper pretty well. I don't expect him to shut him out. And I'm sure none of you do either. Amari Cooper is a talented first-round pick. But I think we keep Amari Cooper out of the end zone. I don't think that they get a passing touchdown this week. I think we force David. I hear people calling him David Carr all the time, and I wonder why. So I think we force Derek Carr into a couple of mistakes. I think we pick him off twice, and I think we hold him to 10. So my prediction for this week is Miami 30, Oakland 10.
Only 10 points, eh, Daniel?
That's it. One touchdown, one field goal. I think Marshawn gets in the end zone, and I think their big booted kicker will kick a 45, 50-yarder.
There you go. Well, I got to say, I got to figure that we're going to give up quite a bit of passing yardage. We usually do. We did in both of the games, but we didn't allow them to get into the end zone much. So with that said, I figure they're going to get a couple of big plays on us and probably end up getting a couple of scores on us. But I still think we should be able to handle them, and I think we're going to end up playing with the lead for most of the game. I'm going to say that it's going to be 31-20 in favor of the Dolphins.
Uh-huh.
Good guys win.
Sounds like we all are thinking along the same lines.
Yeah, we are. And I think we'll give up a few big passing plays. We typically do. I think we give up 300 yards probably, but I think we end up holding them out of the end zone. As far as the passing game's concerned.
I hope so, yeah. I mean, that fits Oakland's MO. They get some big plays, but they don't always get their butts in the end zone.
Yeah.
So anyway, obviously I picked them to win as well. 31-13, I believe I said.
Yep.
And I think we travel to New England, and everybody's going to be excited, at least until we get there. Hey, everybody. I wanted to break in and give you a few more of my favorite games. I've got a few to talk about. I'm going to give you 4 of them today. The first one was a playoff game back in 1994. And the reason it's special to me is a couple of things. It was the Marino-Montana rematch. And I was able to bring my son with me, who at the time was 10 years old, and it was his first playoff game. So that was kind of cool. We sat in the middle of the end zone in the lower deck, and he got all fired up, and it was fun. It was just a fun moment that, we both remember. I probably remember it better than he does, but regardless, we both remember it, and it's, just one of those times through life. You get to bond with your kid, and those are always important. But that aside, it was an interesting game. They were both obviously decent teams in the playoffs. Montana, had the reputation of beating Dan in the Super Bowl, so this was a bit of a rematch. And Kansas City opened the game going up 14-7. Miami didn't let them keep that lead long, no, because in the second quarter we scored 10 points to their 3. It was tied up 17-17 at the half. In the third quarter, Miami kind of broke away and scored 10 points, and the final score was 27-17. Both quarterbacks had decent days. It was a pretty exciting game to be at, even though the score, wasn't as close as you might have thought it would have been. But they didn't break away too late, so it was a pretty exciting game regardless. As far as passing stats, Montana threw for a couple of touchdowns. He threw for 314 yards. Marino was 22 of 29, 257 yards. He threw for a couple of touchdowns. Montana had a pass picked off. Marino didn't. Miami controlled the clock for 32 minutes, 30 seconds, and they played a pretty clean game overall. They were 8 of 14 third down conversions. Montana was 4 of 9. Miami had 6 penalties, nothing major. The key was there were no turnovers, and Kansas City had 2. So Miami was able to win the game. It was a playoff victory. We left Pro Player Stadium happy, and it was just a fun day. So that's basically my 14th favorite game. I'm going to go ahead and give you my 13th favorite game. And this one, I'm going back a ways, guys. This was the first year I was watching the Dolphins, and this was actually the second game I saw. I didn't really understand the history then as I do now, but this was the Dolphins against the Baltimore Colts, and obviously that was special for Shula. Having just come from there and the bad blood between him and the owner, and I'm sure this was a game that made Don feel good. Miami won, shut them out 21-0, and that was no small feat because the Colts were a really good football team. Miami's first score was a 75-yard pass from Greasy to Warfield. And then Dick Anderson intercepted a ball and had a 62-yard return. And it was one of the most incredible defensive plays I've ever seen. You literally had Colts laid out all over the field. It was amazing to see. If you've never seen that clip, you have to look it up. There were just Colts laid out all over the place. And the last score was a Larry Zonka 5-yard run, and Garrow kicked the extra point, and we shut them out 21-0. That was a pretty exciting game, and it vaulted us into the Super Bowl. My next favorite game was from 1973. And the reason this one's special to me is because it's one of the first games that I remember going to. I know I went to a couple before it, but it's the first one I really remember. And I was 13 years old, and this was a Monday night game. And as I've told you previously, there's one thing I got used up for. It was Monday night games. In this game, I saw something I've not seen since. Dick Anderson had the day of his life. He had 4 interceptions. He returned 2 of them for scores, and Miami won the game 30-26, so they needed every one of them. He got the first score of the game in the first quarter, 27-yard interception return. Garrow had a couple of field goals after that. Miami was up 13-0. Jim Mandich caught a 2-yard pass from Greasy. They went up 20-0. Dick Anderson was at it again. He had a 38-yard interception. They were up 27-0. And then Roy Jarella kicked a 37-yard field goal. So they were, 27-3. Garrow answered the field goal with another field goal. This one 14 yards, and it was 30-3. Preston Pearson caught a 5-yard pass from Terry Bradshaw, and that made it 30-10. And then Franco Harris had a 21-yard touchdown. That was 30-17. Barry Pearson had a 17-yard catch from Terry Bradshaw. It was 30-24. And then Greasy did something that the announcers just didn't understand what was happening, and it was kind of funny to listen to. But Greasy took the snap and backed out of the end zone for a safety, and Miami won the game 30-26, and really a game that wasn't that close. Most of those late scores were garbage scores. So that was my 12th favorite game. And my 11th favorite game happened a little bit later. It was 1981. And you've seen me talk about this one before, and what made it my favorite, or what made it make my list of my favorites, is the Orange Bowl was a force that night. This was a game against the Philadelphia Eagles, and it was an important game. We needed the game, as did they. And the Orange Bowl, I believe, won that game for Miami. Ron Jaworski was quarterbacking for the Eagles and not doing a very good job of it. It was a defensive struggle. Neither team was able to move the ball very well against the other. And late in the game, the score was 10-3 Philadelphia, and Miami had to score, and they drove down the field and tied it up 10-10 on a 17-yard pass from Strock to Darrell Harris. And they ended up winning on Von Schauman's 27-yard field goal with minutes left in the fourth quarter, and they won 13-10. But there was a instance there where Jaworski couldn't hear his cadence, and he knew his team couldn't hear it, so he kept backing away from center. And he must have done this 8 or 10 times before he finally snapped the ball. And when he did, it was intercepted by Lyle Blackwood, and that just changed the game in our favor. So, it was just one of those days where the Orange Bowl was the Orange Bowl, and the opponent wasn't able to deal with it. He as Howard Cosell said, he just killed himself. So that has to make my list. I was at that game, and it was just so much fun. It's not often a defensive struggle is a hell of a lot of fun, but that one was. So it makes my list at number 11. And that's all I got for you today. So I'm giving you my 14th favorite game. That was the Marino, Montana rematch from 94. I'm giving you my 13th favorite game. That was the 1971 Colts and Dolphins. That was the championship game, and Miami won 21-0, sending them to Super Bowl VI against Dallas. The 73 game with Dick Anderson, one of the first games that I went to, and the 81 Steeler game, the Eagle game, which I've already explained. So that's it. You've got 11 through 20, and for those that were paying attention, if you can name all 20, you'll get 2 entries into the contest. If you can name the top 10, you'll get 1 entry into the contest, and somebody's going to win a jersey. So thanks, guys, for listening, and we'll get back to the show. So any other thoughts tonight?
Well, New England's looking beatable. I'm just saying.
We're not there yet. We're not there yet. We'll do that next week.
I'm just saying. Yeah, well, the last thing that I would like to say is for everybody to make sure they tune in this coming Monday night for the next live cast interview. Philip Jason will be having on Dave Hyde from the Sun Sentinel, the award-winning journalist. It's going to be an awesome interview. Going to hear some really good insight from a guy who's got eyes on the Dolphins at all times. So make sure you tune in for that. He's been around for a long time. He's won some awards. He's a great media man that is kind enough to spend his time by coming on our page. So make sure we get those views up. If you hear this podcast, make sure you tell other people in the group to listen and watch that, and start listening to the podcast and letting us know what you think afterwards. We're really looking for you to get involved with your feedback. We'd like to know how we can improve and what you want to hear. So let us know.
All right. So that's going to be the show for tonight. I want to thank everybody for listening. Enjoy the game this week. We hope you enjoyed the podcast, and you have a great night.
Phil Hard Rock up. Fins up.
Fins up, Dolphins. Win up.